we are creating a new assistant attorney general position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people.
Vice President J.D. Vance is right. When fraud occurs in places like Minnesota, we all pay for it. It's not just Minnesota taxpayer money that is being shipped off to some East African jihadist. Those funds are blended with federal dollars that are drawn down into these states. And while the Department of Justice has a lot of resources at its disposal, we believe that someone specifically devoted to rooting out these fraud cases is absolutely warranted and justified. And that belief is reinforced when we see the behavior of the attorneys general in some of these cases. We covered last night the matter of Keith Ellison actually meeting with some of the groups in Minnesota that were implicated in the fraud, and we got the sense he was almost on their side. Well, the new assistant attorney general won't be. That person will go coast to coast, and we do expect a lot of attention on some of the blue states who have been drawing down federal money and then using it improperly. Joining us now is ace litigator Michael R. Parker. So, Michael, we see this announcement of a new senior position at the Department of Justice to go after this state-level fraud. What will be the elements that they will be needing to prove to show criminal violations of federal statutes?
So, as far as this position is concerned, the federal government is changing how things normally worked. So instead of them paying money and auditing later, what they're saying is we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to pay now, audit later. So what they're looking at mostly is criminal enterprise. So the charges they're going after are conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, bribing federal officials who monitor federal programs. And these crimes carry very significant penalties. So all of those crimes carry up to 20 years. They can stack on top of each other, and all of them also carry a $250,000 fine. So when you ask what elements they're looking for charging these individuals, what they're really looking for is criminal enterprise. They're looking at these nonprofits that, are basically a front, they're a facade. And what they do is they collect money. They say it's going to childcare. They say it's going to helping with social services. And then they take this money and it goes to a lot of these, to be quite frank, Somali immigrants. The federal government has arrested, I believe, 100 individuals so far in Minnesota. I think somewhere between 85 and 95 of those individuals were Somali. So, when you ask what they're going after, those are the crimes: the wire fraud, the conspiracy, money laundering.
I can already see the defenses. If there are people who were supposed to administer these programs and didn't, if they were supposed to audit and check up and didn't, they'll say, well, this isn't my criminal culpability. This is really a broken system. And I was just kind of following orders in a system that was flawed. What do you think about the effectiveness of those potential defenses? And at what point, does an entire system become so broken that it's hard to hold any individual member of that system accountable?
Well, I think a lot of the government officials are also culpable. You have to remember that a lot of these programs are going to their base, right? A guy like Tim Walz, he is getting money, not, maybe through direct efforts to these immigrants and to these people who are committing fraud, but it benefits him. He is a direct beneficiary of this fraud, right? It gets him votes. It gets people to support his campaign. And that's the reason why he's not running for re-election. I mean, the optics of it looks terrible for him. And maybe he's not going to get charged down the road. Maybe, there's not going to be enough of a direct connection to go after him. But I think there's a very strong possibility that lower level government officials will be arrested. They'll be investigated. And crimes will be filed against them because they knew what they were doing. They turned a blind eye to this. It's not just a systemic issue with how the programs are designed, which is, part of it, but it's also that these government officials know what's going on. They turned a blind eye, right? And it's more than just negligence. They have a vested interest in the outcome of these frauds. These frauds help support them economically for campaigns. It helps increase their voter base. And there's also allegations of bribery too. So one of the things I said, bribing federal officials who administer programs. So I think when they dig into this more, when the Trump administration finally appoints someone in the position and it gets confirmed by Congress, I think what they're going to find out is that a lot of these lower level and mid level government officials were getting paid to help turn a blind eye so that these enterprises could continue. Because there's no way billions of dollars can go missing without someone on the inside knowing about that.
Yeah, and we see all kinds in criminal law, right? Accused of various degrees of sophistication. But usually when people know they're committing a crime, there's at least an effort to try to conceal the evidence or cover their tracks. Here, the evidence is just laid bare. There are these places that have no children in them that were getting money. They never delivered meals but claimed they did so. It doesn't really seem like hard facts on the evidence once they've zeroed in on the accused here. Do you make anything of just the brazen display of evidence of the fraudfeasors?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, you can draw a parallel to PPP loans, to the child tax credit. So in, the prior administration, especially with the PPP loans, people had just blatant fraud. People who didn't own businesses would make up a business and then get a PPP loan. They'd have no employees, claim they have 50 employees. I mean, there's some spotty reports of people being arrested for that, but enforcement was super lax, super light. Same thing with the child tax credits. There was this fraud going on, and it's still continuing, but it's starting to get cracked down on, where people who didn't have children but who had income would find someone who had a child and no income and report their child so they could get a tax credit. And it was never enforced. They never went after these people. They never went after the majority of the people with the PPP loans. And I think part of it was political, right? A lot of the people who are committing these frauds were, African American. They were lower income individuals who typically vote Democrat. And the administration before the Trump administration, the Biden administration, didn't want to crack down on it. They said it was racist. They said, they got to go after the rich people and the big fish, when the majority of the fraud was these lower level individuals who would claim, $50,000 or $100,000 for a PPP loan. And I think because people got away with that for so long, they were so brazen with how they did that, that it encouraged them, and other individuals to do frauds like going on in Minnesota, where you have a nonprofit that, collects billions of dollars and the money goes nowhere. No one looks into it. And it's in part, like I said, because government officials indirectly and directly benefit from this fraud.
Yeah.
And some of them may do it passively and not, conspire with the offenders. And I think a large amount of them actually know what's going on and conspire or are bribed by these individuals. And now that the Trump administration is creating this new attorney general position, I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future.
Let's hope so. Certainly, the new person in that role will have a lot of work to do based on the various iterations of fraud we've seen around the country. Michael R. Parker, managing partner at Michael R. Parker Law. Thanks so much for joining us as always.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt.